Day 8 of training camp is in the books for the New Orleans Saints, and we got a whole lot to talk about. Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, Jake Haener. Really eventful day for all three quarterbacks. Plus, who's trending up right now as we get closer to the preseason opener. We'll cover that right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvogel, and as always, the Straight Up Saints podcast is brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. You've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt offshore. Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. Day 8 of training camp is in the books for the Saints, and they went indoors today. Pretty smart idea by Kellen Moore, beating the heat a little bit, seeing if the energy level will change, and boy, did it. All the reports right now coming out of Saints camp were that this was the best practice so far of the Kellen Moore era. A lot of energy from both sides of the ball, a thrilling finish that concluded with a 2-minute drill from Jake Haener, which we'll discuss in just a couple of minutes. But overall, a lot of positives. And I'm just going to read some of the stuff if you guys missed it that we've seen so far. And I think if you're worried about whether or not the Kellen Moore era is off to a good start, this maybe will ease your concerns. Luke Johnson writes, that was the most fun Saints practice I can remember covering in a while. Super competitive, lots of trash talk, fun seeing the entire team react in a huge way to a third team touchdown on the last play of practice. Kellen Moore might be pushing the right buttons. We also had more here from Catherine Charles said the team practiced inside today, and that was the most energy I've seen out of them all camp, which is saying a lot after a few days in pads. The team worked 2 minutes to end practice, and the defense was arguing their cases with the officials at practice. Ross Jackson says, that was so incredibly fun. What a day at Saints practice. And he listed everything that went down in the closing minutes of it. So, yeah, thumbs up for the New Orleans Saints right now. I mean, this is a huge endorsement for Kellen Moore, who seemed really jacked up during his post-practice media availability. And you can tell he's just getting so comfortable in his spot. If you go to his introductory press conference to today's, cracking jokes, all smiles today, really comfortable and confident in what his group has brought to the table, which as a fan, how can you not be excited about this? There is a little bit of unknown. And for a team that has dealt with the Dennis Allen era for the last 2.5 years, you welcome that unknown and you welcome all the changes that Kellen Moore is making so far. So let's get into the quarterback battle, because today was another opportunity for Spencer Rattler and really the rest of the group, but definitely Spencer Rattler, because he was QB1 today. And Rattler did his thing, connected with Rashid Shaheed, connected with Mason Tipton, which, by the way, that chemistry is starting to become, I'd say, undeniable at this rate. So QB1 for Rattler today, and if there was any drop-off, I don't really think you saw it. If you had to say, where's the leaderboard, he remains the number one option on that leaderboard going into week 1. And if he has a strong preseason, that would most likely solidify his spot as the week 1 starter for the Saints. So another really solid day for Rattler. Hasn't really had any of those practices where you go, okay, he's starting to lose his grip on the lead. He remains QB1 until further notice. So arrows pointing up for him. Let's go to Jake Haener. Let's save Tyler Shough for last, because obviously today is the most interesting day. He had probably the most uneven day out of all the quarterbacks. Jake Haener had the best 2-minute drill of any quarterback so far in camp, with a game-ending, game-winning touchdown pass to Mason Tipton. Jake Haener, I got to give him credit. A lot of us Saints fans, myself included, were like, do you really got to go with a 3-man race? We've seen enough from Jake Haener. And it just seems like Jake Haener's every single practice fighting, scratching, clawing to make sure that he remains in this race and he remains an option. And I said this, I believe, a day or two ago, and I really do believe it. If he just keeps stringing together good practices, Kellen Moore is going to continue going with this 3-man rotation. And by the way, that's something that Kellen Moore was asked about after practice today, and he confirmed that it will remain that way for the time being. They'll continue to evaluate all 3 quarterbacks. And when Jake does his thing like that, and there really aren't any sloppy plays, he's completing deep passes to Bub Means, he's completing a ridiculous pass in double coverage, and then you're having a walk-off touchdown, per se, during team drills with no time left, and you're operating a 2-minute drill at a high function, that's going to help out your stock. So Jake Haener had a nice day at practice for sure, even though he wasn't QB1. Tyler Shough, that's where it's the most interesting. There's 2 ways you can spin this Tyler Shough thing. And I think that How you'll spin it is probably more of an indicator of how you feel about the player, but I'll just present what was given to us, and then you guys can make your own assumptions, although I will say it is way too early to jump to conclusions. Tyler Shough had 2 interceptions today. His first 2 interceptions of camp, one of them was a really, really nice play by Nephi Sewell to get the diving interception off the Rico Payton deflection. And then the second one, I believe, was Jordan Howden who came up with it. You can look at that and say, oh, crap, the Saints, they whiffed on this pick. And I'm sure a lot of people will. I read the comments when those posts get put up, right? It's like, oh, Rattler, Tyler Shough had his second pick of practice. And people are like, oh, my God, they made a mistake. Oh, they should have drafted Shedeur. To each their own. I'm not jumping to that conclusion on July 31st. Now, on the flip side, how would Shough respond to that? Has a touchdown pass after, a really nice 14-yard touchdown pass strike. And I would say, from all the indicators here, today was the first practice where, for better or worse, Shough was decisive. Shough wasn't holding on to the ball. He was letting it rip. And if you want to view that as a positive, because if we're being quite honest, he's been a little timid during his training camp sessions, then yeah, that could be a positive to let it rip a little bit more. This is a time to make mistakes. I'd say this for all 3 quarterbacks who are in this race. Maybe Haener has the least, I'd say his leash is the shortest because he didn't start 6 games like Rattler last year, and he wasn't drafted with a top 40 pick like Shough, so maybe he has the shortest leash. But practice is where the mistakes are supposed to happen, where you're supposed to gamble. Drew Brees would say it all the time. That's where you start to see, what can I get away with? What can I do? What can I? That's not to say that you want Tyler Shough throwing 2 picks in practice. You don't. But you also don't want Tyler Shough sitting there and running out of bounds on 7-on-7s and not finding anyone open and not kind of pushing the envelope. I think this is the time to do it. So people are going to spin it one of 2 ways. People are going to say, oh my God, Tyler Shough threw 2 picks at practice. This dude's a bust. They should have drafted Shedeur. What a waste of a pick. Or you'll have the people that will see that he threw 2 picks, responded with a 14-yard touchdown pass, and looked really decisive in practice, whether or not the decisions were right or wrong, and say, well, you know what? I like this version of Tyler Shough a lot better than a couple of days ago when he was running out of bounds on 7-on-7s. That's how it's going to go. People are going to spin it one of the 2 ways. For me personally, I'm going to wait for preseason. I'm going to see how Rattler plays. I'm going to see how Shough plays. I'm going to see how Haener plays. And then I'll do what I usually do, is just jump to conclusions because I can't help myself. But for now, that's where we're at with all 3 quarterbacks. I'd say it's another day where, for the most part, there are more good than bad. It's not like the defense completely dominated the day like they did a couple of days ago. So for me, I think that's a positive. Now, let's get into some things outside of that. Some minor news, some good, some interesting. Juwan Johnson back at practice. So that should be a relief for all Saints fans, because Lord knows we were not thrilled about finding out that he got hurt, because this is a thin tight end room to begin with. We talked about Noah Fant potentially being a replacement option. Well, he goes and signs with the Bengals. So even if you wanted Noah Fant, well, you can't have Noah Fant, because he's now heading over to Cincinnati to team up with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and those boys. So that's off the table. Juwan coming back, though, not being a serious injury, sigh of relief, because if you had to go through what position group can't really afford an injury, and there's a lot for the Saints, tight end's got to be towards the top of the list. So Juwan coming back, huge thumbs up there. Punter. There's been punting competitions. I'm not going to act like there isn't. I don't know if I've ever seen a 3-man punter competition going into August, but that's what the Saints have going on right now. Bringing in Kai Kruger. Kellen Moore was asked about it today. Like, what the hell? How does that happen? And he said, hey, we liked what he brought to the table. Obviously, James Burnip and Matthew Hayball are competing for the job. You'd like to say Hayball should have a leg up because he's got the experience, but the Saints brought in Burnip. They're confident in him, obviously coming over from Alabama. And now Kruger's coming in. In my opinion, you don't bring another punter in unless you don't really love what you're seeing so far from your 2 options, which is now why you might have a third. And similar to quarterbacks, punter's not going to get the spotlight, right? I'm not going to act like I'm going to spend about 10 minutes here talking about punting, but similar to the quarterback play, you got to see how it plays out in the preseason, whether you're pinning the opponents inside the 20, inside the 10 in crucial situations. So that will also settle itself over time. That's for sure. So those are the couple of, tidbits to add here. I'm going to wrap up, though, with what I've been doing for the last couple of days, which is getting to guys that are trending up, playing well at practice, and overall, doing something that I would say Saints fans should be happy about. I'm going to start with a player that I haven't talked about in a couple of days. Talked about him before the start of training camp and how excited I am for him. That's Kool-Aid McKinstry. Kool-Aid McKinstry's played well enough to earn a lot of praise from Kellen Moore. And, Kool-Aid's a guy that the Saints took with a top 45 pick last year, traded up in the second round to get him, and a little bit of a log jam at cornerback last year. You had Lattimore, now you don't. You had a Debo, now you don't. Alontae Taylor was obviously ahead of him. So getting up the depth chart wasn't easy. And I think for Kool-Aid, the opportunity is obviously going to be here now. He's such a good instinctual player, really, really savvy. Is he going to come away with 4 or 5 picks in a season? My guess is no. Can he, have a ton of pass breakups, really clamp down in the red zone? Yeah, I think he can. And so far, the Saints have been really happy with what they've seen from Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I'd argue he's one of those players where he needs to play well this upcoming season for the Saints to be the best version of themselves, because we don't know what they have from corner. But if he ends up being what they expected out of Alabama, that's a really good start for that secondary. So arrows pointing up for Kool-Aid McKinstry, which is great news. Keep it on defense. Nephi Sewell, talked about him having the pick. You need plays like that. You need plays like that when you're competing against others for the third spot on the linebacker depth chart. Because right now, obviously, DeMario and Peter, you're 1 and 2. Danny Stutzman's making a run. If Nephi Sewell's going to make plays like this, that's how you start to shorten the gap. That's how you start to make your case for the spot. So kudos to him. Good day of practice today, and he's in a really, really tight battle. So plays like that are definitely necessary. Keeping it rolling here, another guy that I think, man, you just start stringing together practices where you're like, all right, he just keeps showing up. So he's going to make the 53-man roster if he stays healthy. I think that's Mason Tipton. For starters, clearly Mason Tipton and Spencer Rattler got some ridiculous chemistry going on, because every damn day those two are connecting on a deep pass. So he's made the roster before. He was a training camp standout last year. He is once again a training camp standout this year. As long as he stays healthy, makes some plays in the preseason, I think a spot on the 53-man roster is his. And I think a lot of us Saints fans who were hoping that Bub Memes would take that next step, and there's still time for Bub Memes to do so, that next step has been taken by Mason Tipton, which you can't really be bad about, because it's just similar to Bub Memes, second-year player. So young, time to develop on this roster at a position of need. So Bub Memes hasn't really taken that step yet, but the Saints have seen it from Mason Tipton. So shout out to him. He's definitely arrows pointing up for him. For sure. Another guy that's trending in the right direction. We're going to keep it going with the wide receiver position. Rashid Shaheed, man. I can't stress it enough. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to have a fantastic season for the Saints. And I don't know what fantastic might be for a player of his caliber. I'm not saying he's going to be a 1,000-yard guy, but I look at Shaheed. The speed is there. Added more muscle to his frame. Just continues to get better year in, year out as a wide receiver. Obviously came into the league as a returner, and now you see he's a dangerous wide receiver. Every practice, he seems like one of the go-to options. So love for Rashid Shaheed. There's a level of consistency there that you just have to admire. There's no doubt about it. Trevor Penning. Yeah, we haven't heard a lot about Trevor Penning, and that's a good thing. Trevor Penning he's lost his battles here and there. Lost a battle a couple days ago to Brian Brzee. I believe a day ago it might have been to Brian Brzee. So far, so good, though. He's got teammates talking about how he's looked. He feels confident about his position, actually said it's kind of unlocking his best traits. And Kellen Moore is not complaining about it, and that's a good thing. So Trevor Penning, I think the one thing the Saints did masterfully this offseason, yeah, when you took Kelvin Banks, people are going to complain, right? Is the Trevor Penning pick a waste now? They didn't wait until training camp to say we're going to play him at left guard. They started right away. It's like OTAs came around and like, hey, Penning's going to guard. And you give yourself a 1 to 2 month grace period to get used to that position. So when you hit training camp, it's not so much of a shock to the system as much as it is just a starting to master the position. And Trevor Penning now, like I said, hasn't been a standout at camp, but you are not hearing about Trevor Penning getting blown off the ball or Trevor Penning looking, like the biggest weak link possible to this starting offensive line. He's holding his own at a position that the Saints need him to step up in. And man, that excites me, because I really think if Trevor Penning plays well, this can be a top 12, top 10 offensive line in the NFL. There's first-round talent all over it. So Trevor Penning, arrows pointing up for him. Last, but certainly not least, I talked about him earlier, and I have to start giving him credit, right? Spencer Rattler is going to be QB1 as of now. I expect Spencer Rattler to be the week 1 starter. That said, I got to give Jake Haener credit, because I came into this offseason with the lowest of low expectations for Jake Haener, because we saw him start against Washington. It was abysmal. Had the injury earlier. This offseason felt like he was going to start behind everyone. And Jake keeps making plays. So I need to be fair And if I'm going to mock Jake Haener, if I'm going to say, man, I don't know if he should be in this quarterback competition, then he goes out there and he plays well, I got to give him his credit. So Jake Haener's trending up. There's no way to ignore it. Now, the thing that Jake has to do is he's got to play well in the preseason. So Spencer Rattler's been good in practice, and we've seen Spencer Rattler be good in the preseason, and we've had halves of football where he's good. First half against Tampa Bay, first half against Tampa Bay the second time around, second half against the Commanders. He's had good halves here and there. I've seen stuff from Spencer Rattler. Jake's been good at practice. He's going to have to do it in the preseason, but so far I got to give him his props. He's done his thing. So shout out to Jake Haener. So day 8 in the books. Pretty good day for the quarterbacks. Eventful, to say the least. Defense still doing their thing, obviously. And the energy level that Kellen Moore's been able to get out of these guys on day 8 of practice indoors, that's probably the main takeaway. Kellen Moore doing his thing, has the Saints excited about training camp, which can't always say for teams. So let me know about your thoughts on training camp so far. What's your take on the quarterback battle? Are you worried about Shough throwing 2 picks? Are you happy that he's being a little bit more decisive? Do you think this quarterback race is already locked up? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, guys, make sure to subscribe to Boo Crew Media so you get alerted for new videos from all of our channels here, especially some Saints news here from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.